Hello, world. Ta-dum. Hi, everyone. Thought I'd break the ice a little bit, Welcome to the Kubefirst live stream. Let me take a look here. We are talking today with the Kubefirst team. I'm Kelly, and I run developer relations for KubeShop. It's an accelerator for Kubernetes and cloud-native tools for developers, DevOps teams, testers, all of the above. We have John right above me and Jared right below me, the co-founders of Kubefirst, which, as our new tagline says, instant GitOps infrastructure and application delivery. It's a mouthful, but a good mouthful. John will kind of get into that, share what Kubefirst is and what it all entails. We'll talk about the latest release. So the 1.9 release was big one. Jared and John and the rest of the Kubefirst team spent a lot of nights getting this out for everyone, get a quick demo and everything like that. So if you have any questions before we start, before I hand it off to John, please feel free to put them in the chat from wherever you are tuning in from. And if you're watching this not live, a couple hours later, feel free to write us on Slack or on Twitter if you're there too, and we'll get your questions answered.
Thanks so much, Kel.
Yes.
So we wanted to start by just setting the table about what Kubefirst is, but we can't talk about Kubefirst without talking about Kubernetes. Kubernetes is amazing. It's so good. Kubernetes is incredible. It's a container orchestration engine that has won the container orchestration battle. That used to be that once upon a time there were a handful, and you could still argue that there are still use cases to not use Kubernetes for containers, but Kubernetes is the de facto standard to the point that even Docker themselves are running on Kubernetes, right? So Kubernetes enables organizations with the superpower of being able to run enterprise software very easily and very effectively. It's a framework that takes care of all of the challenges that come out of microservice architectures. So these challenges include, auto scaling and load balancing and being fault tolerant and high availability, et cetera, et cetera. Kubernetes makes all of these things very easy. So much so that for the last half decade, vendors pretty much across the spectrum of cloud computing have invested years adopting Kubernetes and making sure that their software can run in Kubernetes very effectively, very efficiently, and can be installed very easily. As a result of that, the CNCF landscape, which is a Linux Foundation sub-organization, they have amassed a huge, flourishing landscape of cloud-native tools that solve modern problems for modern architecture on a cloud-native ecosystem. So, tools like different ingress controllers to allow access to your applications, different secrets managers to allow you to keep your secrets secure, different autoscalers or infrastructure as code implementations, you name it, it's on the landscape and there are multiple options available to you. As a result, when you're trying to establish a Kubernetes ecosystem from scratch, it can take a lot of time. Even Jared and I, we've been working together for years and years. We've gone from shop to install Kubernetes for the first time at various places. And even though we know these technologies inside and out, and even though we know exactly what we're doing, and even though we're very seasoned Kubernetes engineers, it still takes a lot of time to get started without something like Kubefirst. So what Kubefirst is doing, Jared and I decided a handful of years ago to try and solve this problem. We are building a command line utility that can provision for you a platform of all cloud native tools using some of the most popular tools on the CNCF landscape, where they're all pre-configured, automated, operational, GitOps implemented, and the entire thing is working together in less than 30 minutes. And we have spent a lot of time making sure that our opinions are just a great place for you to start, and that you could extend this platform to include all of your favorite tools, and any of the decisions that we've made about the technology choices. You're free to swap and replace with your favorite technologies and tools, as long as it's cloud native. And so as a result, you can be shipping your applications to production on the Kubefirst platform on a secure, completely automated infrastructure as code and application delivery cloud native ecosystem built entirely on Kubernetes in less than 30 minutes. And then you can start exploring cloud native tools while you're already prepared and shipping to production on a secure platform. So we have a handful of principles. We wanted to cover those briefly. We want to make sure that, so first of all, Kubefirst, we're completely open source, we're completely cost-free, and all of the technologies that we've chosen that power our automated implementation are all also the open source version and the free tier version of all the software that we use. So you will have some cloud provisioning costs. You know, when you're spinning up infrastructure in AWS, there's obviously a cost associated with that. We're not in the middle of that. That's between you and Uncle Bezos. You know, we want to make sure that we're able to provide a very, very powerful, immediate open source ecosystem for infrastructure management and application delivery in no time flat. And it does take no time. It's less than 30 minutes. Easy platform provisioning, core to our discipline. We want to make sure that it's a single command and you're off and running in production. We do leverage the most popular tools, but we want to make sure that it's extensible to your favorite tools. And we keep that near and dear to our heart. We want to make sure that you're able to unplug from us. We want to make sure that you're able to extend the platform to whatever your organization requires. We leverage GitOps everywhere. We love GitOps, and it makes for a very easy implementation for asset management and script-free delivery of assets to Kubernetes. We have a great security posture. It improved even further as a result of 1.9 with our Vault implementation. Jared's going to talk through that a little bit today. We want to make sure that our infrastructure changelog is transparent and available to all engineers on your shop. And we want to make sure that our components are all replaceable with no vendor lock-in. You're not locking into us. You're not locking into any of the tools that we've provided, but we have selected a whole bunch of tools that have enterprise mechanisms for when you grow to a scale that you want to offload the burden of a particular technology or stack. You can offload that to their SaaS offerings. So our goals are, we want to make sure that we're helping engineers tackle very complex technologies like AWS, Kubernetes, GitOps itself, Vault, infrastructure as code. All of these things are things that take years to refine and get right. And we've already done that work, and we're trying to give it to you for free. So we want to make sure that we're delivering a frictionless and secure infrastructure management platform also. You know, to be able to do that with a single command is pretty powerful, and it kind of unlocks a lot of doors about what you can do with Kubernetes. Everything's open source. It's all GitOps. We treat Kubernetes clusters as cattle, not as pets. Everything that we're doing with our roadmap is along that mantra. We're trying to make sure that you can provision clusters and that when they die, they're easy to get back and it's not a big deal. And we're building a community of users that leverage all these same tools the same way. So with all that said, let's get into the 1.9 release. Those of you that are listening along, let us know. We've been a GitLab shop forever. We love GitLab. GitLab self-hosted as a Git provider has been incredible for us, and we would never change our minds were it not for the fact that GitHub is an extremely popular open source ecosystem, and that's undeniable. Even the Kubefirst project itself is on GitHub, despite the fact that we love GitLab the way that we do. It's the right decision in our minds to have your open source ecosystem in GitHub. So with 1.9, we provided support for the GitHub Git provider, obviously. We also had to make a tough decision on IDP and OIDC. We have for a long time had user management on the Kubefirst platform with roles, with access, with reasonable access to the different platform tools for developers and admins and all that kind of stuff. But it was all powered in GitLab, which was a great story. But now that we're also supporting GitHub, we had to make the tough decision of changing to a more authentication and authorization focused IDP story. And we're real excited about what we got out of the Hashicorp Vault implementation with that. So we're going to show you a little bit of that in a sec. Metaphor was used to be a single application that was a sample application to show off the different features of the Kubefirst platform and how stuff works. Now that's expanded to be a suite of applications, 3 different microservices. We have a front end, a Golang backend, and a Node.js backend, so that whichever one of those particular languages is closest to your comfort zone, you're able to learn the Kubefirst platform within the sphere of the things that you're familiar with already. And we're also introducing a new application called Console. Today on 1.9, the console application gets presented to you at the conclusion of a Kubefirst installation process and serves as a springboard to all of the platform tools. In order to run Kubefirst on GitHub, you need, just like always, you need to have an AWS account. You have to have an active hosted zone in Route 53 with DNS wired into that hosted zone. We have good docs on that on our doc site. You need a local connection with an administrator access to that cloud, and you need the Kubefirst CLI. If you already have the Kubefirst CLI, make sure that you brew upgrade to the latest version in order to get the newest and most bug-free versions of the GitHub implementation. You will have 2 new requirements with GitHub. You're going to have to create a GitHub org and a new user to serve as the bot for the Kubefirst platform. That bot user, they're both free. You can create an org in a minute on GitHub, and creating a new user is also super easy as long as you can pick a name that you're happy with that nobody else has ever used before. Once you have that user, you're going to have to create a personal access token, and you're going to have to provide us that value through an environment variable when you do a Kubefirst install. And when we see that you have exposed that environment variable, we'll understand that you want this to be a GitHub installation, and we'll make some decisions based on that. Now, the decisions that we have to make have no impact on the infrastructure. The infrastructure stays the same. GitHub and GitLab both have all of the same underlying cloud resources, and they're all still managed by Atlantis. It's all still automated, and it all still comes to you with source code out of the box. So none of that has changed. What has changed, however, is the applications that we're going to deliver to your cluster if it's a GitHub installation. So when we identify that you want it to be a GitHub install, we no longer will install a GitLab server to your cluster. We no longer will install GitLab runners to your cluster, but we will now introduce a new GitHub action runner controller to your cluster so that you can run GitHub actions privately in your own Kubernetes cluster. We still have application delivery GitOps workflows. They all work the same way as they did on GitHub. They just work in GitLab now. So pull requests instead of merge requests. We still have user management with policies extended throughout the platform. And like we mentioned before, we still have the Metaphor application. It's just now a Metaphor suite with the introduction of 1.9. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to my buddy, Jared. Jared, you ready to show off some of the hard work that our team's been doing with 1.9?
Yeah, let's jump into some GitHub.
All right.
I'm going to make us disappear so we can get in a little bit closer too.
Sweet. Thank you, Kel.
All right. So hopefully you can see the GitHub org now, John.
Yep, looking good.
Perfect. So this is what your new GitHub organization that you created is going to look like when you get here. We happen to have ours called Your Company IO. We just actually got all 4 of these repositories created from the execution of the Kubefirst CLI. And in addition to that, we have a couple new teams in this repository. This is just the 2 teams that we've chosen, but you can expand that to be as many teams across your GitHub org as you like with different permissions. Aside from that, I think it's time to jump into the console application. So at the end of the Kubefirst CLI, you're going to get prompted with this screen. This is the new console that we're providing you so that you have something that we can continue to expand on for more functionality. In the 1.8 release, when we created the Kubefirst CLI and first released it, we were only outputting this information to the terminal, and it was kind of difficult to know what was important and what wasn't. So as John mentioned, we have the Vault here, which is our new IDP, and apologies, I don't have my password. Let's just do that, I guess. All right, and we can sign into Vault. So this initial sign into Vault is going to be really important because it's the one that's going to give us access to the rest of the tools. So if we go back to the Kubefirst console now, just quickly, we can jump into our Argo CD application and see that we have this button up here to log in with Vault. And if we click that, it's going to use the same SSO login. That same story goes for Argo workflows, which I'll sign into because we're going to get there in just a moment for our GitHub actions, which you can see have already been running on the Kubefirst platform. And yeah.
That's awesome. So when you're dropping into those applications, Jared, all of those applications have authorization. You can't get into them unless you've logged into Vault already. But since you logged into Vault, you just get access with the right roles and right permissions to each one of these platform tools.
Yeah, that's correct. It'll use that same OIDC session from your Vault, and you can see that here in Argo CD. They do a nice job of displaying that. This is our self-hosted vault.yourcompany.io server that's running, and in there we do our user management, and you can also see that I'm in the admins group. So for anything that I'm doing across our ecosystem, I get admin privileges. We also have a role for developers, which is going to have slightly reduced permissions, which is going to be up to you to decide who goes where.
Right on. So you mentioned that initial login is really important because it gives you the ability to add your users to the Kubefirst platform. Can you show us what that process looks like to onboard users in a GitHub ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So this repository is going to look just like the one you're going to get in your new GitHub org. And we manage our users in Terraform to keep it convenient for us to onboard and offboard. You can see here we have an admin's GitHub and a developer's GitHub. For this demo, I'm only going to be adding a couple of admins, and I have a staged file here, which I'm going to blindly copy into here. Obviously, would recommend you getting some peer reviews while you do this, but when you're provisioning 3 or 4 of these GitHub orgs and clouds a day, it doesn't make too much of a difference. So let's go ahead and add Caesar and Christian.
And real quick, before we submit that, Jared, on line 98, let's just highlight that real quick. This is a GitHub username on line 98. So when you're onboarding a new user, they have to already have a GitHub username pre-established in order to onboard them to the Kubefirst platform, because we're extending the user module into those different GitHub teams that you were showing us a minute ago, right?
Yes, that's correct. So we have there's only 2 things that you need to do. One would be to add a new module usage for the individual you're trying to onboard, giving it the first name, last name, as John mentioned, GitHub name, and then up above, you're going to add that user's new entity ID to Vault so that it can get that group membership and allow us the OIDC across the platform.
That's awesome. Thank you. And what happens when you submit this pull request?
Well, we're going to find out. So I'm going to first make this commit on a branch and open this pull request. With part of Kubefirst, is getting that Atlantis automation that John was talking about. So it automatically kicks off for you. And this is the same experience that you'll get when you get to the end of your execution. You can click on that Atlantis details there to see what it's doing. It's doing the same thing that you would do on your local host to run this Terraform, but instead giving us a trail in the cloud. So if we go back, we can see that this pull request, was updated with a comment. This comment came from Atlantis, and it shows that same plan that I was just looking at in the other view. And if I come down here, I'm going to go ahead and apply this. So instead of merging it, I just come and type the comment Atlantis apply, and Atlantis is going to go attempt to apply that Terraform, which I'll drop into that view one more time. And if there were any issues with this apply, it would stop and it would spit that information back into the pull request as a comment and let you know that there was an issue. Otherwise, if it's successful, you can see here that it updated with an apply that was complete. Because that apply was successful, it's going to automatically merge that and close the lock on the Terraform state. So now that that's happened, if we come over to our Vault instance, the user pass authentication method is where our users are stored. So C. Filo and Christian Fernandez are the two that we just onboarded here on that pull request. We can see that they have access. If we wanted to come in and look further, we could go look in the groups of the members, et cetera, et cetera. But let's see. So yeah, John, where would you like
Yeah,
to
really awesome. So just to highlight that one detail about the apply process that Jared was talking about. So when I'm sure anybody that's ever run Terraform knows this story. You write some infrastructure as code in HashiCorp HCL. You run an apply, you run a plan. The plan says, this is what's going to happen when we apply it. You review the plan. It looks great. And then you go to apply the plan and some collision might happen. Maybe you were trying to add a user, but there's already a user with that same username that already exists and you can't do it. And there's certain decisions that happen in Terraform that you just can't find out are going to be a problem until you're applying the Terraform. Now, when your engineers are running those on their local hosts, they're just fighting through that problem and there's no visibility to it. They're making decisions about what to do to adjust the execution of their Terraform. They're fighting with Terraform, then they finally get through it. And if you're lucky, they'll take those changes and pull request them and get them back into the system so that they don't cause a regression error later on. With this fully automated system, all of that stuff is handcuffed to being transparent and available to all the engineers, all the site reliability engineers, all the platform engineers, all your developers. Everybody can see what's happening and when and who approved it. And not just that, but when the apply happened, was it successful? And if it wasn't successful, what did you have to do in order to make it successful? So having that transparency in your infrastructure as code story, we think is really important to having a healthy security audit log. And we have that day one on the Kubefirst platform. So that's super cool to call out. Next, Jared, would you mind shifting gears a little bit? We sort of showed our Atlanta story a little bit. I guess one last question for you. When you submitted that pull request, a plan kicked off. What is it about submitting a pull request that makes a plan kick off? Where's that instruction?
Sure. So we have Atlantis wired into the GitOps repository, and there's this Atlantis YAML file that lives here. And basically, each one of these blocks of code is going to tell Atlantis what to look for. You can see here that there's a bunch of directories listed, and if that directory is registered and any changes happen to any TF files, then Atlantis will automatically respond and execute that plan without any interaction.
That's awesome. Sounds pretty easy. Let's switch gears into Metaphor. Now that we have our sample application running in GitHub, we've long used Argo workflows as our workflow engine, but GitHub and Argo workflows don't natively work with each other. So can you show us a little bit of what the Kubefirst implementation does to solve that problem?
Yeah, so this is, as John mentioned, one of the three new applications that you're going to get on day one. Metaphor Go is just a web server that displays a little bit of information. If we actually jump into the Kubefirst console here and look at our Metaphor front-end development, we can see this is not displaying a ton of super useful information, but it is showing you a couple of things. It's going to show you the app name, which is Metaphor Go, which is the repository I'm going to make a change to. It shows you the chart version that's currently deployed, as well as the image that is running for that application instance. There's a couple configuration things here as well, but we'll highlight that in another live stream or video. So jumping back over to the Metaphor Go repository, I'm just going to make a quick white space change here in the README. And I'm going to commit that directly to the main branch for the sake of this demo. And what that's going to do, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jared, but right there, what you're doing to commit to the main branch, that's basically just simulating what happens after a developer submits a pull request. It gets reviewed, it gets approved, and then it gets merged, and then it touches the main branch. It's basically anytime the main branch gets touched, this workflow will kick off. Is that right?
That's correct, yes. Yeah. So we'll jump into this pipeline real quick. You can see there are four jobs that are going to run. First is the publish job. That's where we're going to build the Docker container as well as the publish the Helm chart. Instead of watching this quickly, the experience of Argo workflows that we were trying to maintain from our GitLab story was that we got all of the feedback of Argo workflows into the Git provider. You can see in this Argo workflows UI that I previously SSO'd into, there's stuff happening. And under the hood, there are some cluster workflow templates, which we have covered in our docs, that are executing for this job. Each one of these checkboxes executes in its own container, which gives you a really nice ability to protect your secrets and anything in CI that's running through RBAC in the Kubernetes ecosystem. It's one of the reasons why we chose Argo workflows, because of its native ability to run in Kubernetes. You can see we're getting down here to the publish step. So I'm actually going to jump back into the Metaphor Go GitHub action that's executing. And fun thing about this, each of these color changes that's happening is nothing that we did, but that's actually provided by Argo workflows. And each one of those color changes is one of those new container instances that's running its small piece of work and then going away. And one last thing to get to is this is about to publish to development. So I'm going to drop into the Argo CD UI. Because of our GitOps delivery to development, staging, and production, all of our applications are delivered through a pull paradigm. So instead of us pushing that change into the ecosystem, this Metaphor Go development application, if we look quickly at these app details, it's telling us that it's looking at our GitHub, your company IO GitOps repo, and it's looking at this path. I'm not going to jump over there just yet, but maybe in a few moments. If we check in on the job, and it has successfully delivered to development, which it looks like it's just now updating the wrapper chart to set to version 0.4.0. And give it just 1 second to complete. Perfect. Now that desired state has been updated in the GitOps repository at that path that we were talking about, Argo CD pulls on a 3-minute timer. So instead of making us wait 3 minutes, I'm going to click this refresh button here, which is actually going to trigger a new container creation, deploy the latest revision that just went to development. And you can see that container starting to run. I quickly want to note the Docker tag over here is 5046. And if we go back into the the Argo CD UI and wait for that container to become running, it's going to kill off that old instance of the development container. The new one is running. I can jump back over here to the front end application we have and watch this Docker tag change. When we refresh, now we have the new instance of the code that we wanted deployed to development, and we can go verify that by going to the Metaphor Go repository, visiting our commits, and seeing that BDC3D is in fact the SHA that we have here running as the new development instance for our Metaphor Go API.
Very, very nice. Very nice. So anything else that we want to show about Metaphor? I think we beat it up pretty good.
Yeah, it feels pretty good for Metaphor.
Awesome. All right. Well, And with that said, we thought we would just kind of talk through what's next for the Kubefirst project. So
John, real quick to interrupt you, there's one more thing we can cover just real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Was in this new GitOps repository that you're getting, there are two small patterns that we regularly use, which are nice to highlight. So we have a single registry that we call the main point of what Argo CD is going to add to our cluster. And there are two ways that we register applications here. If we go look in Argo CD, oh, sorry, that's Argo workflows. I'll close that one so I don't do that again. And go to the registry here.
In the world.
Yeah. All of these applications are actually the same directory structure that we have living in our registry folder here. And to look at that a little bit closer, you can see there's one called Atlantis components. So I'm going to go click on the Atlantis file that lives in the registry directory. And over here, you can see that we have this thing called Atlantis components. So in the same way that I was just describing how that metaphor application is delivered, we can see that our GitHub account here, Your Company IO GitOps repository, has some desired state that we would like about the Atlantis application in that components folder. And because of that, we have this wrapper pattern that we refer to where sometimes your application needs a few more things to go with it to make it run successfully. A good example of something like that would be a secret of some kind. So in this particular application for Atlantis, there's a secret that we need. And by wrapping all of these Kubernetes objects or assets, however you want to refer to them, in this folder, we can allow Argo to use the native sync waves to deliver these to the environment.
Right. So with that registry pattern, where just by having an application in the registry is how applications get delivered to your Kubernetes cluster, that really just highlights why our platform is so extensible to you and all of your teams. If you wanted to add a New Relic agent in here, if you wanted to add a Datadog agent in here, if you wanted to add whatever tool it is that makes your day-to-day go well, it's just a matter of adding a YAML file to a single directory that the Kubernetes cluster is registered to pull from, and then it becomes part of your cluster, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. Pretty sweet. Thank you, Jared. Really good talking point too. Thanks for bringing that back up.
Yeah.
So what's next for the Kubefirst team? So we're very excited. We got KubeCon right around the corner. We're going to be up in Detroit in a couple weeks. Really excited about that. I heard a rumor that it's going to be the biggest conference in the post-pandemic era. So it's really exciting to be a part of that.
Who told you that?
I saw that on Twitter. I haven't fact-checked it yet, but do you steal from me or stealing twice? It was someone else's idea. So what's next for the Kubefirst team? Obviously, we have some preparations for KubeCon. We're excited to put on a good show at our booth up there. For the features itself and the platform, we do have some user experience improvements that we want to be making to the CLI and console experience, that exchange with our end users about what values do we need from you, and then how are we going to provision the platform with those values. And then as we provision that platform, it generates a whole bunch of sensitive content. We have to get that back into your hands. We want to make sure that that whole exchange is a really quality, good user experience. So we have some stories that we're going to be implementing on that front. We want to continue to elaborate on our extensibility patterns for downstream add-ons. We want to make sure that it's super frictionless for you to be able to not only add your favorite tools to the platform that we provision for you, but if you're in the business of provisioning with any regularity, maybe you work at a consulting agency and you do Kubernetes installs for a living or whatever, and you have some particular tools that you want on every single Kubefirst install moving forward, we want to make sure that you're really well supported in that regard, so that whatever the tools are that make your implementation magical are effortlessly available with every one of your installs. we want to add container vulnerability scanning as well as a little bit of testing to our CI. Some of the feedback that we've gotten recently was that people love the metaphor application and they want it to be a little bit more realistic from a pipeline standpoint. They want to see the patterns in place for end-to-end testing. They want to see the patterns in place. We already have some unit testing and linting and stuff in the branch, but we're going to expand that a little bit further to give you a real working example of all the stuff that you would need when adopting Kubernetes for the first time. We want to find smart ways to introduce Crossplane to the platform. Crossplane is an exceptional infrastructure as code technology, especially for GitOps. GitOps is just really powerful in Kubernetes in terms of delivering content to places and making sure that your actual state matches your desired state. We have an opportunity to extend our GitOps story into infrastructure with Crossplane, and we're looking for smart ways to do that. Now, that's not to say that we will forego automated Terraform. We love our automated Terraform story with Atlantis, and we will continue to support automated Terraform. We know there's a lot of organizations using Terraform today, but we are starting to look at smart ways to adopt Crossplane and further extend into the GitOps space. Multi-cluster management is going to be a fun one for us. We're looking at that probably close to the end of the year this year. And we are actively listening to our users. So if there's a feature that's really important to you, that's a deal breaker between you using Kubefirst and not using Kubefirst, hop in our workspace, tell us about it. We would love to hear from you, and we would love to implement the things that our community needs on the platform. So with that said, we're really excited about 1.9. We're excited to hear about the stories that come out of running Kubefirst on GitHub. We've already had a couple really exciting tales about some people using GitHub and the Kubefirst platform on it. We ourselves have officially adopted GitHub internally, so our internal management stack. Just a couple days ago, we tore it down and rebuilt it on top of the GitHub platform. So we'll be dogfooding our own GitHub implementation now, at least through the duration of the next couple releases. And we're excited to see you guys in Detroit. And yeah, we thank you for joining our live stream and want you to join our workspace and tell us what you need. We're really excited to continue to extend our platform the way that we are. So thanks for joining, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Nice. We have lots of really good comments in here. We have a cross-plane lover. We also have a nice little comment here from before when Jared was sharing things off from Cesar, who's one of our devs, but definitely a good comment overall for everyone. So going forward, like I said, is there a way for everyone to kind of keep up to date on the roadmap and everything too?
Yeah, our roadmap we keep on our docs site. So if you go to docs.kubefirst.io, you'll see right up in the header, there's a roadmap section. And we do keep that up to date with each release. It's a little bit nimble in terms of the features that we have and when we're going to do them, but everything on that roadmap we're looking at for the conclusion of Q3 and Q4. So
cool. There's all of our social links. You can find us on Twitter at Kubefirst. Just Kubefirst? Is that right?
Yep.
GitHub, Slack, Kubefirst.io. We'll be in KubeCon in 2 weeks. If anybody watching here would like a virtual ticket, let us know in the Slack channel. We have a couple more left over and love to kind of see you there and bring you in. And thank you for being a Kubefirst K-Ray mega fan. And if you're going as well, I know there's lots of those out there already. And feel free to come by the booth. We'll be over in the startup section. So booth numbers SU startup 88. It's over where you pick up your KubeCon t-shirts and things. You'll find us, and I'm sure you'll see a big K-Ray, Manta Ray t-shirt walking around somewhere with one of us too. So thanks for tuning in. See you guys later.
see you guys.
Bye.